What does dirt have to do with the creation evolution question? Dirt on an asteroid. And does this shatter all of the biblical creation themes because we are able to find some amino acids on an asteroid? Let's find out on Revolution Against Evolution. Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
And your co-host, Rich Gear, here as well. And Doug, I'm kind of Doug from the Earth. We're going to be talking about Earth, and I'm very happy to dig into this subject. And I'm going to let you start, because this is really right up your alley.
Yeah.
Things about amino acids and polycarbons and all this kind of stuff, and I probably even butchered that. But you go for it, Doug.
Well, what this is all about is the asteroid Bennu was visited by a mission. It's called the OSIRIS-REx mission, where they sent a probe to this asteroid, which actually landed on it, and it took some samples of the dirt that was on this asteroid. And then they brought all those samples back to their Earth, and just recently they announced very tellingly that this is evidence that life could have evolved in outer space. And so we're going to sort of dig into that little notion. And I'll give you the hint here. It's a lie.
That's a hint? Okay. Why don't you tell us what you really think, Doug?
Well, it is a lie because what it's doing is it's ignoring the whole origin of life information that we already know, that it is not possible for these organic molecules, even though they find some of these simpler amino acids and they find nucleotides, and I'm finding that hard to believe that they're actually digging this stuff up. But if it's there, they have to explain, well, how did those reactions take place on this asteroid or wherever it came from to produce this organic material. And so I'm skeptical of the whole thing, but let's presume that everything that they found in this sample is true. And what was admitted in this article, though, is a very key and important part of this, is that the amino acids that they found, I guess they found 14 of them. And that's amazing to me because a lot of these amino acids are fairly complex. I doubt that they find the tryptophan and tyrosine or some of these more complicated molecules, but if they find the simpler ones, that's quite interesting. And so the question, though, is are they right-handed or left-handed or both?
So, Doug, you, in this article said there are three things they found supposedly on this asteroid. You got I can't even pronounce, hydrocarbons and the amino acids, and then what's the other one? There's three things they found or something, but they're all supposedly think that this could be used in the spontaneous generation of life.
Right. And
you're already alluding to the one major problem with everything. Even to down here, we do experiments. When you try to combine amino acids, they basically form both right-handed and left-handed in equal amounts. I mean, they're basically, in life requires left-handed only. And so right there, it kind of sort of like shoots it in the foot right there to try to, because what do they find there? It seems like they're both equal, right-handed and left-handed. Is that what you're?
Yeah, they admit in this article that they find equal mixtures of both, and that was one of the things that they were hoping to find, was that maybe they find the left-handed kind. And their theory about that was that during this journey in outer space, it forms originally found both kinds, but then well, by one kind of chemical reaction or exposure to ultraviolet light, it breaks down only one of the right-handed kind, and so it's left with the left-handed.
But that doesn't seem to be the case.
That's not the case.
Okay.
And it flies in the face of what we know from normal chemistry, is that if you have purified the left-handed kind, and you leave it outside of life, it eventually turns into some of the right-handed kind.
Oh, it does. I didn't realize
it
that. Okay. Huh?
So it's not a cut and dried thing that if you purify it, it stays that way. It breaks down, and that's what we have here, is maybe some breakdown of life. Now,
is this asteroid is this asteroid fairly large? That what they're talking about, this Bennu?
It is large enough for them to land on.
Oh, wow,
and
that's
it might
good.
even have a gravitational field, but it's kind of a funny shaped asteroid. It's not round, and so it's pretty small. But it's a near Earth asteroid.
So where's it located? Where's it actually at?
It's between us and Mars. And the reason that they made the trip out there was there's certain objects like that have a chance of hitting Earth. And
So what did they send a probe up there, Doug?
They sent a probe up there and got in orbit with it and had a soft landing on it, and then they were able to gather some samples and bring them back. Now, that's a pretty interesting feat. A pretty expensive experiment, I would say.
Was this NASA that did this, or
NASA did? I'm sure. I think this is a mission that was sponsored by a consortium of like Europeans and and so there was a number of people involved with this. It's really interesting to me that these people are spending so much money on this type of experiment, because we know what they're after. They're after an explanation why we have life on the Earth without God. And I would propose possibly a alternate scenario within a Christian perspective or biblical perspective, is that maybe during the flood there was a collision with the Earth with an asteroid or something that caused the
particulate matter to go up into space?
Go into open space.
Didn't they have that with their? Wasn't there about 15, 20 years ago or something? There was they got some stuff and they basically made the idea that it might have been from Earth in the first place. I can't remember.
A Martian meteor.
Yeah, Martian meteor. Yes, that's what
they
it was.
found that in Antarctica.
Yeah.
And so they said, well, it's got these organic molecules in it, and then they found out it really didn't. But this is the same type of thing. They're desperate to find life in outer space. They go to all these different planets in the solar system to see if they're bearing life.
Because the moon dust is sterile, as far as I understand, right?
It is, yeah.
And I don't know about Mars; it's probably sterile too.
I don't think they found anything of significance on Mars. But here we are in the only planet where we have the organic matter that is created by God. Perhaps this is a remnant of the flood. Maybe an impact event that could have caused this meteorite to fly out in outer space. And this is only speculation on my part.
Right.
But
it's no different than their speculation.
Right.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned,
they found a lot of non-biological stuff, these organic molecules, and nucleotides, some amino acids, but here's the rub: is that you can't have life if you don't have proteins, and if you don't have life, you don't have DNA, and so here you got it's like the letters of the alphabet, and laying out in it's sort of like your alphabet soup, or they're arranging themselves randomly to maybe form a sentence.
Well, that's the thing about like the DNA molecule, they're arranged in like three-dimensional shapes, and if they're not even in the right shape, they're not functional. They don't work, or they don't do what they're supposed to do. Even one little thing off, and you can have a disease or a dysfunctional cell or a dysfunctional molecule. Am I right there?
Right, and it's like finding these letters just laying around on the ground, and you're going to hopefully by some little explosions make them all form a sentence.
But here's the thing, Doug. Even if you got the explosion, which is we talk about the odds of it, it's so astronomically, no pun intended, huge that it's virtually infinitesimally impossible. But even if that happened, you have to have not only a coding system that exists, but you have to have something that reads it. You have to have both a sender and a receiver at the same time to make it functional. Isn't that what I mean? What's the idea? It's like, unless you have DNA, you can't have protein. Unless you have protein, you can't have DNA.
That's correct. Yeah.
I mean, it's like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? They had to both happen at the same time, and so however impossible the odds for even a DNA molecule to be formed, then to have a protein or a protein, but at the same time, it stretches credibility. And I ask people who are atheists, how much faith do you really have? I mean, to me, the faith I have that there's a being outside of space and time which makes sense of things more than a random chance that just basically says it just happened out of nothing. Everything happened. This is what you have to say. You have to always go back to the uncaused first cause, and that's why they're so desperate to find these things. Mm-hmm. That's why they're so desperate to find any reasonable thing to show that life could have happened without a creator.
Yeah, this was essentially my experiment when I was going to high school and college.
We've talked about this many times, and it's always worth repeating because it's good. Go ahead, Doug.
And the Miller-Urey experiment produced stuff like this, these simple amino acids and a lot of non-biological goo. But my thought was that what we need to do is now take and put these in the little warm pond that Darwin talked about.
Yeah,
and
primordial.
And zap them with a little bit more and see what happens. Well, I had 4 different amino acids I tried it on. One was glycine, another one was alanine, and that didn't produce anything. It just, I had those things zapped for hours, and it wouldn't do anything. But what I found was that the more complicated amino acids, tryptophan and tyrosine, both of those started to turn brown.
This is the brown sticky goo you're talking about? Yeah.
Well, what I had to do was I had to isolate what it had made, and had to boil it down to this brown sticky goo. And then we put it in an infrared spectrophotometer to see if we could discern the structure of it.
Okay.
And basically what I had was a burnt amino acid.
Oh, so that gave you nothing.
Well, you're right.
Burnt amino acid.
It didn't do what I expected it to do, was to form the peptide bond. Now, then I found out that to form the peptide bond, I can't do it in water because you have to remove water out of the...
Oh, that's what they're talking about.
You have to remove a hydrogen from the amide group, and you have to remove OH from the hydroxyl group, and to hook them together. Now, if you have 2 different kinds of amino acids and you want to put them in the right order, you have to block off one of the ends of these so that they don't react in the wrong way.
Okay.
So if you have 20 amino acids to actually form the genetic code, the code to produce a protein, to have it meaning, then you have to do that each of the time of for each amino acid that's in the chain.
Okay.
So a typical protein might be like 410 amino acids. That's what Mr. Cobbage.
Cobbage, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so I remembered that from 1973, where that was the thing that convinced me that the experiments I was doing was futile. And then he also mentioned the left-handed, right-handed problem, which is something that is now well known. It's now known to be a huge problem for evolution to discern how it comes about. So, but they don't have an answer for this, but what they're doing is giving you the smoke screen that these organic molecules mean that life originated.
Well, this is the whole idea, Doug, when they go out to plants to try to find water. Because water is, all life that we know needs water. But we know what you just said there about you have to remove water for something to combine in a peptide bond, right? Is that what you said?
That's right. The peptide bond, you remove the hydrogen from the amine, and you remove the OH from the carboxyl group.
So then there you got the same problem that we talked about. Unless everything works, nothing works.
Right.
Okay? In other words, you have to have water to live, but you got to have no water for anything to combine. So it all has to work at the same time, fully formed, as opposed to some little piece putting together this way, this little piece puts together. It sounds so reasonable, Doug, when you're from an unbelieving standpoint, because the reality is, Doug, if this can't happen, then the only appeal you have is to God. And that is untenable for these people. Who's the one that said it's not that creation isn't a viable theory, it's just that we can't allow a supernatural foot in the door?
Richard Lewontin, I think it was.
Was it? Yeah, Lewontin? Yeah, Lewontin. And that's exactly what they're forced with. But every time they do this, because this is what's called panspermia, basically, isn't it, Doug? You want to get life from outer space. Because what does that tell you, Doug? Everything on this earth is basically precluded the fact that it could ever happen down here on Earth. So basically they're telling you, they're acknowledging inadvertently that life could not have started here based on present processes and naturalistic processes on Earth. So they got to find an extraterrestrial origin for how this could have came to be. But what you're saying is that the extraterrestrial origin is just as bankrupt as the earthly origin.
It certainly is, and then this brings out another challenge for the chemists, is to imagine a scenario where these molecules could have come about on the asteroid Bennu in a series of chemical reactions from simpler molecules. This asteroid didn't have any atmosphere, and so how these
exactly
the nitrogen, methane, ammonia, and nitrogen didn't exist. So where did this come from?
Yeah, see,
it has to be, in my mind, it has to be actually come from Earth.
It's almost like every step of the process that they need for an evolutionary process to happen is blocked. Every single step gets blocked along the way. It's like, that's why in the Miliuri they postulated what they call a reducing atmosphere, correct, Doug?
Yeah, right.
Where there's no oxygen, because oxygen destroys. I mean, even today, free radicals, free oxygen molecules causes rust and decay, and it's harmful. But yet we breathe oxygen. Without oxygen,
amino acids has oxygen in it.
Yeah, there you are, and that's another thing. Every step along the way, it gets blocked. This is why the most scientifically proven law, if you will, the law of biogenesis, abiogenesis cannot happen, or life from non-life, from naturalistic processes, it stops you right in the beginning, Doug, from anything happening. And yet they keep trying to find things that could cause it to happen because they refuse to acknowledge the creator who made them.
Yeah, in our conference that we had about a week and a half ago, we had Dr. James Tour, who is a synthetic chemist. He makes his living making molecules. And so that's what he does for a living, and he is a professor at Rice University. And so he has this talk similar to my talk, except he's taken a lot of things I found that's experimentally, and he's expanded on it, And so he's showing that he goes into each aspect of the whole life cycle of life. where you have DNA producing RNA and RNA coding for proteins in the ribosome. You have to have an origin of the ribosome and a process to make the ribosomes and the mitochondrial DNA and all these different things are part of the...
If Darwin had any idea how complicated this thing was, we would never have evolution. I don't think he could. And, it's because what did back in the 1850s or 30s or whatever he started postulating some of this. What they thought was basically it was a blob of jelly, right? I mean, the cell was a blob of jelly.
Right. Yeah.
We can't even get to a protein,
right,
let alone a cell. Mm-hmm. And you talk about ribosomes and mitochondrial DNA molecules and all these kind of things, RNAs, transfer RNAs, messenger RNAs, all these things that are part of the machinery of a cell. Mm-hmm. Just to get one cell, Doug.
Now they can actually produce a peptide, polypeptide, and they have. It takes months of planning, and you have all these scientists working together. You have to have a lot of beginning left-handed amino acids.
Okay.
And
do they call the right-handed ones away?
Well, they have to. They start out with the first reaction where they combine the two of them together to form a peptide, and then they have to attach the third one onto the end of that one, and then the fourth one onto the end of that one, and making sure it doesn't attach on the wrong end.
Okay. Yeah.
And so.
And of course, they know in advance what they're looking for.
Exactly, yes.
As opposed to this being random.
And it takes a lot of very expensive automated equipment.
Yeah.
And it doesn't give a very good yield. And so, if you do this though in life, they have these proteins are enzymes. They are special proteins that fold in a certain way to catalyze these reactions to make sure they go automatically.
So, Doug, this begs the question, not to be glib, but is this? Are they trying to prove that non-intelligence created a cell?
Yeah.
There's all these scientists. Are they trying to prove that non-intelligence made these things happen? They can barely get something to happen with all these intelligent people.
Right. And so it's reasonable to assume that a creator God, when he created this earth and eventually destroyed it with the flood, but he saved 8 people on the ark, and this is a reasonable thing to believe because it's historic. It's something that we have flood legends all over the world, where this is not something that we Westerners dreamed up, or the Jews, or anything like that.
Yeah.
We have all the, the Native Americans have flood stories. And so
they're pretty ubiquitous.
And also, there's Tower of Babel stories that are part of myths and legends.
No, that's along with the creation stories. There's a lot of those around as well.
Exactly. Yeah. But we believe that the Bible is the most accurate story that we have of that event that took place in history. And so we're talking about making history speak for itself. If we try to come up with our own reasoning by digging into the rocks and the asteroids, as an example.
Doug, to put on a shoe on the other, I think it's fun to go out and look for stuff like this, But the problem is, what is the agenda that they're trying to do this? They're trying to do everything they can to disprove the need for a creator. I mean, up until Darwin came, that's why they hold on to him so vehemently, because there's no other explanation which they can postulate how we got to be here, and how we have an intelligence, and how we have a longings for purpose, and why, even though we know we're only be on this planet for 70, 80, 90, even 100 years, it's going to be temporary. What gives us a purpose beyond that? Doug, have you ever wondered? I know you have. I have. And if you're thinking out there, Why do people care so much if what we think is not true is not true? Because in 80 years, you're worm food. What do you care? What does it matter? It matters not a jot or tittle. But if it is true, then every jot or tittle of the law, which Jesus came to fulfill, is valid, and your eternal destinies are wrapped up in that. But the point of it is, it's why I care, because I want to see you come to faith and life eternal. But why do you care? When if I believe or you don't believe, we're in the same boat in 80, 90 years. What does it matter? Now that's an intellectual argument, and I realize it's not persuasive because it's really a heart issue, Doug.
It is.
It's really a heart. We give you all the science stuff all you want, but ultimately it's a heart issue. It's a mind and the heart produce revelation. Think upon it, meditate upon it, but your heart responds to it, and the two will produce a revelation that he is indeed the creator of the universe. He's done what he said he was going to do. I don't have answers to why all these things are important, Doug. Do you understand fully why blood is needed? But it's consistent through the whole ancient world.
Exactly.
I mean, it's everywhere.
It says the life is in the blood.
Yeah.
In the scriptures.
And so why that's the case, I don't fully understand it. But I know that the realization that he is who he said he was, and I responded to that invitation, has changed my life for the better. Now that's a subjective, personal, anecdotal. I understand that, but everything is anecdotal to one extent. It's what is your experience? What have you produced that's life-giving, life-affirming, life-valuing? The Darwinian worldview is, what does the one guy say? It's the rot that tears through the fabric of society, of culture, and it is. So why do you subscribe to it? What value has it produced in anything that's life-affirming? But the Christian worldview, the idea that there is a creator and he's Jesus Christ, he's made it, and he's redeemed us despite the flaws, despite the brokenness that's happened because of our sin, he has come to restore us. And that changes life for everything. We can give you all the information, and it's fascinating, it's fun, it's interesting, it's valuable. But your heart needs to look at it. You need to look at it, study, but then look at it with the heart. It's a heart issue, Doug.
There's one point I want to make before we
get back to the asteroid.
Well, we're going to get back to the blood.
The blood, okay.
Chlorophyll and hemoglobin have very similar structures. The only difference is that in the hemoglobin there's an iron molecule, and in the chlorophyll there's a magnesium molecule. But the plants have a system going on that's different from living creatures. That they are just they're using these two similar molecules, one to carry oxygen, other one to carry carbon dioxide, and they're sort of reverse of each other.
Interesting.
But the structures are quite similar, but those two molecules are very difficult to synthesize.
What if that goes into the idea that why animal life is biblically alive, but plants are not biblically alive? They're both biologically alive, but they're not biblically. Plants are not biblically alive.
We can explore the idea of
fascinating.
plants forever.
We got to wrap it up, Doug. I think we're running out of time here.
We appreciate the fact that you've joined us on Revolution Against Evolution. We'll see you next time.